welcome to the Rescue Dog Pod. I'm your host, Helen Summerfield Brown, President of Stray Dog Support. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. We truly appreciate you joining us and listening wherever you get your podcasts. On this show, we celebrate all things rescue, from the inspiring stories of second chances to the gritty realities of the work that goes into saving lives. Today, we are incredibly honored to welcome a very special guest, Neil Laird. Neil Laird is a multiple Emmy-nominated producer and author whose incredible body of work has taken him to more than 70 countries, creating compelling documentaries for major networks like National Geographic, Discovery, the BBC, PBS, and the History Channel. Alongside his historical and archaeological projects, Neil has also produced groundbreaking programming around animal rescue and welfare, including Dogtown for National Geographic, documenting the rehabilitation of abused and neglected dogs, and Puppy Bowl for Animal Planet, celebrating rescue pups finding new beginnings. He is also a talented author, combining his love of storytelling with history imagination and insightful character work in his Primetime Traveller series. We're so excited to dive into his journey and talk about storytelling, the intersections between his creative work and the world of rescue. So, welcome, Mr. Neil Laird.
Quite an intro. Thank you very much for having me, Helen.
Well, when we talked before the podcast a while ago, I was like, told you how much of a geek I am because I was geeking out because I am I studied history, and I'm a history, buff and a history nut, and your work, and I'm like, oh my God, the Neil Laird. I was like Googling, is that the Neil Laird? So I was so super excited to have you on because you're such an interesting story to tell. You've done so many things, and we are truly honored to have you on our show today.
Well, thank you. And it's great to hear that because when you work in television, you make hours and hours of TV and it goes out into the ether and you have no idea who's watching and if they're watching, or the remote control just got lost in the sofa. So anytime I hear someone says, oh, I watched Shark Week or Mysteries of the Abandoned or What on Earth, it's like, oh, wow, people are actually seeing it.
So it's amazing. I love, Mysteries of the Abandoned, one of my favorite go-to shows. So anytime I can get to watch Mysteries of the Abandoned, I know the new series just dropped, so super excited about that. But it is, if anyone hasn't watched those shows, I highly recommend you go out and watch those shows because they truly, they very well told stories about abandoned buildings, and they have such a good history behind it, and it's just uncovering a different world. So you do amazing work, and so again, geeking out. And if I start talking too fast, it's because I'm geeking out. So, but let's dive into.
I love a good geek. I mean, you saw my bio. I'm all about geek.
Yeah, you are. We are geeks, and you Geeks United. So, let's talk about you. Let's talk about you. Enough about me. Let's talk about you. So, you've had an incredible journey creating the documentaries for the National Geographic, Discovery, History Channel. But what first drew you into documentary filmmaking?
I was always enamored of movie making when I was a kid, growing up in a small Pennsylvania town. And, I think I always must have liked history then, but wasn't aware of it. I think of the films that I watched over and over on TV as a kid. They were all the big epics, historical epics, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, The Seven Samurai, David Lean's movies like Lawrence of Arabia. So I thought I'd go off and become a filmmaker myself. So I went to film school in Philadelphia, thinking I would become, Martin Scorsese overnight when I went to New York. And sadly, that did not happen. I was working on crappy horror films, watching the grip trucks and no one stole it at 2 a.m. And those were on really bad films that I don't even repeat today. They were not on my resume anymore. But I had all the Toxic Avenger 2 was a biggie. I was very proud of that one.
Toxic Avenger 2. I'm writing this down. I have not heard that one.
I couldn't even get on Toxic Avenger 1. I guess I wasn't venerable enough for that. And some horror film with, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's deep in the dark past. Tales from the Dark Side, the movie was one I remember. I got a chance to hang with Deborah Harry between takes.
Deborah Harry.
Yeah,
she was
Deborah Harry. God bless her. Yeah. Hope she's not listening, but she was a bit zoned out then. Lovely lady, but I don't think she was trying that hard. Anyways, I had a lot of free time, and I started hanging out at the New York Public Library because I was broke and it was air conditioned. And I picked up a book on the rise of early man. I don't know why. I guess I'd read enough books about Kurosawa and Bergman and stuff. And my world shifted. I became absolutely enamored of ancient history and the rise of civilization, something I didn't get when I was a kid growing up in a Catholic neighborhood outside of Pittsburgh. So I resolved to teach myself history through the New York Public Library. And I really got stuck when I got to Egypt and Rome and the ancient world. So much so that I said, well, sod this, I'm going to backpack and see these countries. That's when I discovered I want to find a way to come back here time and time again and get paid for it. That led to documentary. So I went back and got my master's degree in documentary filmmaking, and my thesis film was about the restoration of the Great Sphinx, which I was able to
Mm,
sell as a student to the Learning Channel back when they were still learning, before it was TLC, and I've been doing it ever since. So I never really thought I would get into documentary until I started seeing the world, and until the world opened up to me. And since then, as you said, I've been to 70 plus countries and made over 1,000 hours of television, and a lot of it is really driven by my desire to see every country I can.
wow, that's pretty, that's such a colorful background, and the fact that one thing sort of changes your whole
Hmm.
trajectory of life, which is pretty incredible. And yet you said you've been to more than 70 countries in the world. Is there any particular place or project, I mean, maybe Egypt, or project that has truly changed you personally or professionally? Like maybe what's has changed you?
It's a good question. Certainly, Egypt is my happy place. My first film was there. I'm going back there again next month to do another film about King Tut. I've probably done, a dozen or so in between, probably more. But I love all of I love the Mediterranean. I love that part of the world. But anything that has the ancient cultures and the ruins. When I write my novels, which also take place in the ancient world, I always rent a villa near the place I'm writing about. So the first book took place in Egypt, so I rented a little Airbnb in Luxor near the Valley of the
Hmm.
Kings and wandered there every day. When I did Pompeii, I went to Naples. I'm writing the book about Troy right now, so I was in Turkey. I spent the 2 weeks in Athens last month finishing the book. So what impels me is that desire to travel. I think anything that I've been excited about doing since I picked up that book 35 years ago is about the desire to see the world.
That's amazing. And so, like, maybe like, what are some of the most memorable stories you've encountered while working on historical archaeological films? Like, what anything that sort of stands out? Some stories that you could tell us from your time, from your travels.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the great gifts of being a documentary filmmaker, of course, is you're there when normal people cannot be there. You're filming archaeological discoveries and digs, and you're seeing people in their environment when they're actually, opening that tomb for the first time. I
Mm.
remember in one of my early films, it was about the workers of Giza, about the pyramid, who built the pyramid, and why, that old chestnut. And recently, they had just discovered the tombs of the workers. Now, right on the foothills of the Giza plateau, used to be stables for horses. And then in the mid 90s, they discovered underneath it was an enormous necropolis that was built not for the pharaohs, but built for the regular people
Mm.
who constructed the pyramids and the Sphinx. And I was there when they opened one of these tombs, and they're little beehive tombs, very different than the ones you would see in the Valley of the Kings and King Tut and such. And as they opened one for my camera crew and I, actually not for us, we happened to be there, they were doing the real work. I remember this gust of hot air that billowed out of the tomb that I realized had been sitting inside that tomb for 4,500 years.
Wow.
It was so hot that I remember my eyebrows sort of singed. And then it was gone. And then it was just woof, the air came back. But the most incredible thing that I saw was it was a very small tomb. It wasn't the person wasn't mummified. That was meant for the elite. He was curled up in the fetal position as they usually were interred, and he had several clay jugs and pots around him, whatever small, meager things you want to take into the next world. And we videotaped them, and they were pulled away for a second to do something. I think the experts wanted to get in there. When we came back 2 or 3 minutes later, all those pots were cracked. They had
Hmm.
already deteriorated. The air that had gotten in there had already taken something that was untouched and unpreserved for 4.5 millennia, and was already erasing it from the world. And that's when I realized not only the privilege of seeing that, but also how destructive archaeology and these investigations and explorations can be if you're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I watched I watched Expedition Unknown, which is another show, and they just sort of went into the Great Pyramid, and they're uncovering all the different chambers in there and things like that. And it is, like you said, it's like there's a balance between discovery and there's a balance between destruction, and that because it's it's covered up for a reason. Do we
Yeah.
have a right to undig it? I know we want to find out, but what is your thoughts on that? Should we
It's a
be
very
undigging?
it's a very good question. Of course, we all want to see that. I mean, I love discovering more about the ancient world, and I
Mhm.
love, or even just 300 years ago, the ancients, understanding how people lived. That really drives me. But we do recognize that the reason these things are preserved because they're off the chart, they're hidden. And once we bring them back into the world, it's our responsibility to take care of them. And sometimes you can. Egypt, for example, just finished a museum called the National Museum of Egyptian Culture or something, where they put all the mummies in climate controlled uh, tombs for the first
Mm.
time to make sure they don't deteriorate, because they have been, as you can imagine, once a pickled pharaoh from
Mm.
3,000 years ago gets placed in the modern world, it starts to fall apart. So
Mhm.
I think I'm not against archaeology. We have to have conservation in place before we do it. And a lot of times people just want to get at the gold, they want to get at the glory, and then once they find something, it's left to molder,
Yeah,
and that's a
yeah,
great shame because things are lost forever. Once it's gone, it's gone.
exactly. And you have to think about that is a person's tomb. That is a person who has passed, and that's
Correct.
do we have the right to dig up somebody? Who has passed, that is their resting place. And I sometimes look at that and go, that you discover a skull, discover a bone. I'm like, hey, mate, maybe we should just leave that there because that's their tomb, that's their resting place, and
Yeah,
just
if it
so that
was
we
your
can.
parent or something, how would you feel that it was, plucked and put on someone's mantelpiece somewhere, or sold at auctions at Christie's, whatever?
Exactly,
It's a question of who owns the past and what responsibility we have to those people who came before us. It's not an
exactly,
easy answer, and not everybody treats it the same way. But you're right, tombs are sacred places for many people, and that's why they were built with such care and elaboration, because they were their vessel for eternity
right,
until
and
suddenly they wake up and they find out they're in the Cleveland Museum of Art.
I know what it's like. It's cold here. It's like take me back to
Yeah,
the
well,
hot
this
weather.
sucks. Exactly.
I was like, I know, yeah, exactly. So in your documentary, can you share how you balance like your factual rigor of documentary storytelling with creative narrative elements?
I mean, it's definitely a balancing act, particularly when you're making films for a popular audience, like all the places you mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, you have to tell a good, compelling story. But of course, particularly when you're working for Geographic or BBC, as rightly so, you have to be a slave to the facts, footnoting and making sure everything is correct. The tricky thing is, of course, the real reality of making these documentaries is we're not really discovering anything. It's very rare, like the story I told you when I was there when something was found.
Hmm.
Usually, like an Expedition Unknown or those shows, and I know the people who work on those shows, they're great filmmakers, but we only have 7 or 8 days in the field at most, so we already kind of know where we're going when we get there. Things haven't been discovered. We have to get our host to walk through something that's already been safely excavated and those kind of things. So we're fudging the truth a bit. The sense of adventure, the sense of being there when something happens, that's fabricated in many cases,
Right,
and it's fabricated mostly by budget and by time, but also because most people want to be transported and see the real thing. We can't shoot a dark. I did an archaeological show a couple years ago, looking for Nefertiti's tomb, and Discovery Channel actually funded it because the head of the excavation was convinced he would find it. So we paid, I don't know, several $100,000 for the excavation. Discovery did, and we found nothing.
hmm,
And at the end of the day, it was a fun little story about looking, but no one wants to see just looking. They want to see the finding. So we in television know we have to deliver the goods.
right.
And that means sort of backtracking from the discovery and telling the story in reverse. And that sometimes means recreating things and moving things around in order.
Yeah, I mean that is interesting you say that because a lot of times when I watch these shows and you don't find anything, but they find other things that are just as not important, but they're still pretty impressive. They'll find like they go and searching for gold and then they find a nail, an old nail from
Correct.
200 years ago.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just as good as treasure as the gold because it tells a story.
And
And
you're the audience. That's fantastic. A lot of people say they found a freaking nail, all that work, and they found a nail.
yeah, and I'm like, dude, that's a nail from a house that was built by people many years ago. They could have had Jesse James hiding in it. They could have
Yeah.
had. I mean, it is like it's treasure.
What
And
it does is, I'm sorry, cut me to cut you off.
no,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
What it does is it transports the viewer to that place and tells a story they wouldn't otherwise know. And that's why I love it. That's why I love the format and don't mind the conventions we have to make. Sometimes we bend it a bit too much. I try not to, but it's a search. I just got off a 2-week cruise. I also do cruise lectures and talk about my books and my films and that kind of stuff. And I just did one of my talks was about Atlantis. And I talked about the 10 candidates for Atlantis based on the 10 Atlantis films I have made.
Mm,
And in
wow.
no cases, I can tell you, do we find Atlantis, right? You didn't
Right.
read about the paper. But they all did well because it's one of those evergreen subjects, and people want to be transported to the sense of adventure and see people looking underwater or looking at different theories. So if people are excited about the journey, then the destination, the payoff, doesn't have to be we found it. It can
Right.
just be, again, taking somebody out of their, taking somebody off their
Couch.
armchair travel and then plop them somewhere else.
Yeah, and you get to learn something on the way. That's the thing. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
many times, like, oh, I had no idea, and that's for me is like I learn something every time I watch these shows, whether it's set up or whatever. But it's still for me, it's like that's some history and you learn. But so now you've been nominated for multiple Emmys. Congratulations. How
Well,
has your
thank you.
recognition from peers influenced your work opportunities?
Ask that again. I'm sorry.
So, how has your recognition from your peers influenced your work or your opportunities since you've been, an Emmy thing? Has it sort of given you a broader, bigger scope, bigger
The
opportunity?
Emmy always helps, plopping on a CV. But at the end of the day, I tend to get my jobs, as most people do, through word of mouth and the people you already know. I think certainly having that, on my CV or cover letter helps. But really, the film I'm doing now for King Tut, I'm doing another one on Moses later next year. Those are from people I already know in the business that have already worked in the same genre, the same field. And I think that is more important than just the Emmy or the BAFTA nomination or those kind of things, because it really proves you've built relationships and
Hmm.
I'm definitely known as an archaeology, Egypt, Greco-Roman guy. So if you want to go shoot in Rome, Pompeii, you want to shoot in Luxor, you want to shoot in Athens, I'm your guy. I know the landscape, and
Right,
that's a reputation you build, I think, more than the accolades of an Emmy or that kind of high ratings. Those are
right.
icing on the cake. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's like, does this man understand his genre?
Well, that's and that probably crosses over a little bit into like the rescue world. You are the people like rescues like us. We're known for helping in India or for Egypt and so forth. So
Right.
we people come to us when they know that. So now, talking about animal welfare and rescue projects, because you've done some amazing stuff there, your work on Dogtown captured the rehabilitation of abused and neglected dogs. And so, what were some of the challenges and rewards of telling those stories through your films?
What was rewarding in that, of course, I got to the show was based on Best Friends Animal Sanctuary out in Kanab, Utah. And then we were embedded with them. And as the dogs came in, the whole show was about trying to get them rehabilitated and then in foster homes. So at the end of every show, we got the chance to see 2 or 3 dogs that actually went off with a forever home, which was fantastic. Some were more difficult than others. I didn't work on this story, but before I came on board as a showrunner, the reason the National Geographic even commissioned it was Best Friends took all the Michael Vick dogs. Remember who
Hmm.
Michael Vick was, the fighting dogs.
Yeah, we all
And
know
these were
Michael Vick. Yep.
angry, yeah, and these were angry dogs that they wanted to euthanize. And Best Friends took them and they rehabilitated them and they got all but one, I think, adopted. One was too angry. But the rest, it was great to watch this transformation. And then, this was years ago, so I imagine these dogs are all gone, but they went off to the forever homes and they became, pets again. They became real dogs. And that was the wonderful thing about the series. The toughest thing, of course, was I remember I was working on season 2 or 3. And so some of the new stories were a bit tough by that point. It's like, okay, what are we going to do? And we'd come in and we'd talk to like the intake people and say, hey, we need a dog that needs to be rehabilitated before we get, what do you have? Well, we have a dog that humps people's legs all day long. Okay, well, that's a long way down from from the Michael Vick dogs, but
But
it's
we'll take it.
episode 68. We got to do something here. One dog
Right.
whines too much. You know?
Oh, right. Or drools when it drinks.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Some of them the stakes weren't quite as high, and some were adorable. I remember my own personal experience was coming into the National Geographic show, and so I came from not from the animal shows, Animal Planet. I came from archaeology and stuff. I really wanted to let people know that I do love dogs, and that, in fact, I was considering to adopt one while I was there, trying to get brownie points, when I was there.
right.
And I remember asking the people when I got there, who are all lovely people, and of course they're dog people, so they're much more comfortable with dogs than they are human beings.
Mm,
So God
as
bless
we
them
all
because
are. That's it's
we all
true.
are. Yeah, dogs are much more loyal. But I remember I said, "Which dog here can't you get adopted? I live in a small Brooklyn apartment with my husband. We can get one nice little dog in there." And they pointed to a dog sitting casually underneath the desk in the office, and it arguably was the ugliest dog I ever saw. It had no lower jaw. It was badly put together from a bunch of different parts from animals. It had a tongue that hung down because it had no lower jaw and dragged along the floor. It
Oh,
would pick
bless
up
him.
paper clips and cigarette butts and things like that. And it was all sort of spotty and mangly, and it came from Alabama. Someone dropped it off, and I said, "Ooh, well, I was hoping for a cute cocker spaniel, but I can't tell them that. I'm from National Geographic." So I said, "All right, I'll at least foster the dog during the shoot, and then if it doesn't work out,
Mhm.
I'll fly home without it." Of course, I fell in love with this thing right away. This beautiful, wonderful dog, Dara. I brought her back to Brooklyn. In fact, I remember even talking to my husband over the phone. He wasn't there, and I said, "Yeah, they offered me a dog. He has no lower jaw." And he quickly says, "I want it. That's my
See,
dog.
I
Don't
love
let
your
anybody take
husband.
my
Let's get
dog."
your
Yeah.
husband on there. Let's get the husband on there.
He just left for the office. It's a shame he didn't. He would tell that story again. He said, "I'm gonna come out there and get it myself if somebody takes my dog." And he did. He came and picked it up in Las Vegas and drove up and took Dara home. So that was the personal experience. But the great thing was just seeing how these dogs are transformed,
Mm,
and to know that these dogs went off and weren't euthanized, weren't left in cages, that people understand how dogs think and act and what they need, and that got them back out in the world.
yeah,
It
and
was a
like
very rewarding experience.
I'm so grateful that you took that dog because we deal with the most broken dogs here at Stray Dogs Port, and the broken dogs they just choose you and that people can just see past what they look like. They make the best pets. And how
Oh
long did you
yeah.
have Dara for?
She lasted about 8.5, 9 years. She was probably
Mm.
3 or 4 when he had her. So, I'm surprised she lasted that long because again, I equate him like, I don't know if your dad had like a shoebox in the garage of all these random parts thrown together. That's kind of what Dara was. These parts that don't connect that somehow form a dog.
So
That was
perfect,
Dara.
perfectly
So she
imperfect.
survived. And she was totally chill. She was totally comfortable. The
Well,
only
she
problem with her was simply her looks. It was all cosmetic.
well, she thought she was fabulous. That's all that matters.
Yeah, she was. I remember walking down. We used to live in the meatpacking district in New York, where all the fancy
Mm.
hotels and um, nightclubs are. And I was walking a dog down 14th Street, and this beautiful. She had to have been a model. She was dressed like a model, and she had the high heels on, and she was walking down there, and she had a handler behind her, looking nervous, probably because they didn't want to mess up the $10,000 Chanel dress she had on or whatever. She saw Dara and she almost brought tears to her eyes. She got down on her knees in this expensive dress and let Dara give her all these sloppy, nasty kisses. Couldn't couldn't go say goodbye to this dog. She loved it so much. People saw this dog and they just laughed. They smiled. Dara made you smile. She was so goofy looking, you couldn't help but fall in love with her.
See, and that's the stories that's a great testament to, like, if anyone's ever considering adopting dog, you went into there with a mindset of getting like a breed specific, whatever dog, which are also wonderful. But finding the most broken dogs, I mean, like they just literally make you
Yeah.
smile. And so if anyone out there is considering a special needs dog, call Stray Dog Sport. But grateful for that. And then you did the puppy bowl. Tell me about the puppy bowl experience.
I did, yeah. The Puppy Bowl was it's a show I didn't work on directly. It was Animal Planet, my sister network, Discovery Channel. But towards the end of my tenure there, I was there for 12 years and then got laid off, and both Animal Planet and Science Channel, my network, went away overnight. I
Mm,
was one of like 900 people who got pink slips. But towards the end, we had a small crew, so we were working on multiple shows at once. And I was one of the execs on Puppy Bowl, which, if your viewers don't know, your listeners don't know, is sort of like counter programming to Super Bowl, where they bring all these puppies and they just have them run around in a fake stadium, looking awfully cute. There's
yes.
nothing at stake beyond just cute dogs for 2 hours, and it's been Animal Planet's perennial biggest hit.
Yeah, it's huge.
Um,
It's right before the
yeah.
Super Bowl game, and they also have Kitten Bowl now because it's
Oh,
expanded
they do have
across.
Kitten Bowl. Yeah,
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
transition to that. Yeah, so Animal Planet as a network is gone, but Puppy Bowl lives. And Dara died in, I don't know, maybe 17 or 18, and then we wanted to get another one. We couldn't during COVID, of course, because everybody wanted one. But I was finally getting itchy to get one. My husband was too. So I told the showrunners on Puppy Bowl that give me a dog that the way these Puppy Bowl works is a humane society around mostly the country, though they do the islands and stuff as well. They send, I think, on their own expense, a dog to Puppy Bowl, which we shoot in upstate New York, and then they fly them home and they use it as promotional. It's not like Best Friends where the goal was to get them adopted on
Mm,
site.
mm.
They go back and they use it as, oh my God, our dog, appeared on Puppy Bowl. Now come get her and give to the Humane Society. So it's great PR for them, but it comes at a cost. So I remember telling the showrunner, whatever dog is coming from the furthest point is the dog I want. Save you on shipping fare home. And the furthest one was a dog from Honolulu. And I knew nothing about the dog other than they said, oh, he's a white dog. It's sort of a mutt. And I remember I wanted to surprise my husband with the dog because I wasn't sure until the very end that I was going to even get this dog because other people might have been vying for it, and maybe the Humane Society wanted it back. They were pleased as punch finally, but I remember surprised Carl one Sunday morning when I finally knew the dog was up there, and the showrunner drove the dog down directly from his place in like Westchester because his wife says we have too many dogs. We're not keeping this one. Get it out of the house. Because you can imagine if you're a showrunner on Puppy Bowl, you have a lot of dogs.
Right. Yep. I
You
can
fall in
imagine.
love with a lot of dogs. So his wife says, "Get this dog out of here. I can't have a sixth one." So he came down on a Sunday morning to drop it off. And I remember telling my husband that someone from work is going to run down, and he has to pick up some. I couldn't think of an excuse to lie. What lie? So he's going to pick up some hard drives. And it was only later I realized I don't think the hard drives have existed since
I was
like
gonna say, let's say something like pick up a floppy
1998.
disk. Let's like pick up a
Yeah,
floppy disk or something.
my lie was my lie was for crap.
It was flawed.
Yeah, it was flawed. And Carl was not happy. It was a Sunday morning. He was in his jams. He was not looking forward for the bell ring and have to entertain some guy from Discovery Channel. But the guy rang the bell and he handed me the most adorable little white dog, half pit bull, half poi dog. I don't know, just a little puppy, 4-month-old puppy. And when I handed it to Carl, his face absolutely melted. In fact, it appeared on Puppy Bowl because they shot it for that that Puppy Bowl where the dogs are today.
Oh wow, I'll have to go
So
check that out.
last year's Puppy Bowl had a little interview with us at the end where
Oh,
where and we had just gotten back from Turkey. And Carl, when he travels, he always likes to memorize a few phrases in the local language.
mm.
And one he always struggled with was the Turkish for welcome, which is hoş geldiniz. And he finally remembered it when he got home. And when the guy came with the dog, he yelled out hoş geldiniz to the dog, and that became the dog's name.
Oh, so it's Hush Gilgit. That's his name, but you just call him Hush for
we,
short.
we we trimmed it to Hosh.
Yeah, you can say hush, hush.
Yeah.
So like on the puppy bowl, at the end of the puppy bowl, don't they normally have people coming in getting the dogs that they say adopted those dogs?
I thought that was the case too, but at least on the season that I worked on, what usually happens is people behind the scenes adopt the dogs.
Right,
Yeah, I know another dog I was looking at. There was one that was coming from Bimini or something, and that was the other option I
Bimini.
would have gotten. Bimini, yeah, which is an island off of Florida.
Yep.
Yeah, and but then one of the security guards at the site picked that dog up first. So I think they don't have much trouble getting rid of them all, but I know sometimes some dogs, for whatever reason, have to get flown back. So I was very lucky to get this one. But I don't think it's a concerted effort to get the dogs adopted because it's not live. We shoot it in the fall and it doesn't air until January or February.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, it's important that I think, like, how do you think entertainment platforms influence the perception and support of animal rescue efforts? Do you think they do enough, or there needs to be more to be done?
That was a good question. I think everything, of course, is predicated in television on ratings. Um, and rescue shows did well for a while, but they tend to wax and wane. Dog Whisperer was a big hit for a while.
Mm,
What was the animal? National Geographic Wild, which I didn't work for, but they had a
mhm.
lot of animal stuff. Um, it's tricky, I think, sometimes because people get tired of the same format. So television isn't going to be the answer to animal rescue, and I don't know, if their responsibilities do more or less. It really comes down to who's watching and who's not.
Mm, mm,
Dogtown had a nice run of 3 or 4 years. Puppy Bowl, of course, is an institution.
mhm, mhm.
Um, I
Yeah.
did a series. I did a series years ago, which failed, but it has some of my most wonderful experiences. When people ask me, What was my most happy moment? What was the most transporting moment of all my many shoots? It actually wasn't Egypt or Rome or Greece. It was a very short-lived show I did for Animal Planet God back in '05, '06, and it was called Get Out There. And the concept was we would take families that couldn't afford holidays and take them to national parks around the US where they would learn about the wildlife and then hopefully fall in love with it. I did 3 or 4 episodes, one in Costa Rica, one in Glacier Bay, Alaska, and I did one in the Grand Tetons as well. And sometimes the families were on board, sometimes they were not. But the family in Glacier Bay was absolutely wonderful. It was a mother, a single mother with her 3 boys in the San Francisco area. I can't remember their names, but they're absolutely adorable. And at the beginning of the show, we all talk about what one animal do you want to see? And so we tell them we're Alaska. They open up and then one says, "Oh, I want to see an otter. I want to see a bear. I want to see a moose." And the mother just wanted to see one orca whale. Her goal was to see one orca, and we couldn't find any. And all the kids got a chance to see their animals with the rangers' help. And we were doing wrap up interviews on the last day. We're going to look at some glaciers at the very tip of the bay, and we're kind of doing interviews on the deck of the boats, talking about what the journey was like. And she was happy that her kids got this experience. They really were hard up, and this
Nice.
was they couldn't have taken. And I asked her, "Well, you didn't see an orca whale. How do you feel?" And she goes, "Well, it's disappointing, but I'm glad my 3 boys saw their choice." And as she says this, literally in live time, the intercom radio comes to life, and a boat at the head of the bay says, "Are you still looking for orca whale?" And the ranger says, "Yes." She goes, "Well, you better get down here now because there's a super pod of about 500."
Wow. See? That's the
And
universe.
It's a universe, and I get chills just thinking about this image because they all come. It was the salmon season. They're all coming into the bay to feast, and I don't know if it was 500 or 300, whatever. It was hundreds and hundreds of these whales, and we got down there just the sun was setting, and we turned the corner, and I remember seeing one boat out there with the sunset, and hundreds and
Mm.
hundreds of um, orca whales hopping out of the water and being everywhere. There were so many that they were on both sides of our boat. And I remember our cameraman, she got on top of the boat and she couldn't figure out where to put her tripod, which side of the boat to shoot off of, because they were everywhere. And I looked over this woman's face and the tears in her eyes, how happy she was for seeing this. As the sun is setting, the
Oh
ranger is
gosh.
crying, the camera woman is crying. The ranger said, "We've never seen anything like this before." It was this absolutely glorious, perfect sunset shot of all these hundreds of orcas that was clearly made for this one lovely mother.
That just made me
And
get goosebumps, Neil. Why are you making me get goosebumps at this time of the morning? That's amazing. That's like the universe rewarding her for being selfless. Like
it's
saying,
exactly what it is. And
like,
of all the people in that show, she's the one who deserved it the most. So wherever she is and she's listening, I still remember it. And believe me, I felt the love too.
oh, that's
The
it's
gods were with
amazing.
us.
That was yeah, that's the universe, being so grateful to her for being such a selfless person, and that's I'm surprised that show didn't pick up from that because that sounds like a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to sort of do something like that. So, hey, if anyone out there listening, circle back to circa 2005, pick that up.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a
So,
great
are you
idea, and it was a great way to go into the national parks and see it, and meet the people, and then
the
learn a bit
animals?
about the animals. Exactly. So it's part educational, part what's the word, observational.
Yeah, and would you like? Have you thought about doing anything? I know we talked a little bit before the show about hey, because people know that I have animals in all over the world. Have you ever thought about doing another animal show where perhaps you go into all these different shelters and meet rescuers from different countries all around the world, what they're doing for animals? This is me
I mean,
pitching my idea.
yeah, I can see that. I mean, I'm not the guy to pitch it to because I'm known as the archaeology guy. They call me for when you want to they find a new discovery at Pompeii. I get the call. So I'm not really in that world anymore, unfortunately. So I have no idea what's being made. I wish I could say let's start next Thursday,
How
but
about we'll find you some dog bones. We can dig those up.
okay, all right,
How
yeah,
about some
find me.
discarded chicken wings or something from somebody's thing, we'll put in there or something like that. But when you're out and about, I mean, you've traveled all over the world. You've seen tons of animals around. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe talk about some of your experiences, what you've seen while you've been traveling.
Um, I mean, good and bad, of course. And we talked about Cairo earlier when we first met. Now, I think it's gotten a little better in Cairo, where I spent a lot of time, but there's a lot of wild dogs there, and not all of them are treated with any care. I certainly have seen dogs get hit on the road or, whimpering in the trash
Mm,
cans and stuff. And it's not like some cultures don't care at all. I just think there's bigger problems in Cairo and the developing world. I think that they can't take care of because they don't have the cash. I just got back from Athens, and my God, you can't blink without seeing 15 cats. No matter where you turn in Greece, there's a whole bunch of cats, and
really?
they must be loved because all over Athens, when I was walking around, you'd see people feeding. They'd have like 15 bowls outside their house, clearly feeding these stray cats. So, I think each culture maybe has a different connection with it, and I
Mm,
know it's a very expensive and difficult thing. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, look, I certainly have seen dogs that have come up to me when I was shooting in some backwater place in Sudan or Iran or some remote place, and you wish you could help them, but of course you can't.
Right. And have you seen any like weird animals, like things that we probably don't even know, like anything that have you met a rhino? Has an elephant crossed your path or something like that?
Um, well, I did get chased by a bear in that same show, the the Get Out There show. That's a long story. I don't know if you want to hear it or not, but that
Yeah,
was being
go ahead.
chased by
Tell me your bear story because I'm
a.
sure viewers can totally relate to being chased by a bear. Go.
Okay. Well, it's an animal rescue show. I don't know if you want to animal rescue this. So the same show, the flip side of this wonderful woman in San Francisco with her kids was a family that I took to Grand Tetons, and they were far less joyous. They didn't go on the trip because they couldn't afford it. I think Dad just didn't care. I don't think they'll
Mm,
be listening. It's a shame because the kids really were just sort of shut down. The parents just wanted to sit by the pool and drink mai tais or whatever. They didn't want to learn about the uh, the wildlife of the Tetons, which was
mm,
gorgeous. But again, the same thing is we all asked the kids what they wanted to see, and one of the kids really wanted to see a bear. And of course, that's where they are. And then I remember we had a ranger, Ranger Sue, who, of course, when you do these things, you have to make sure you're with somebody who can take care of it
right.
and get fine. And she took us to a place where the bears come down on the side of the road to eat the berries, which we all see. You go through Yellowstone or whatever, everybody can see that. And that was fine for a few images of B-roll, but she could tell that this was hardly a great sequence. The kids barely got out of the car and she said, well, maybe we can get a little closer. There's a path up here. Let's go up the path and maybe we could shoot down and get the bears from behind. Ranger Sue goes trotting up there, and so does the 4-person family. And the way it works is we had two cameras on the crew. We had one on the families and one on the animals. So the guy who was shooting the wildlife went up with them, and I stayed down the road with the guy on tripods, just shooting the family going up the hill. And I mentioned that because I didn't see what happened next. Was I heard on my headphones, which I was monitoring, one of them scream,
Mm.
and then I see the entire family coming running down the trail, one after the other, wide eyed. And in behind is Ranger Sue, and behind Ranger Sue is a bear on its hind legs chasing them all
Oh, jeez.
down the path. And it was later found out by the cameraman who was up there who didn't move because he knew what was going on. Ranger Sue had, through her own negligence, I would admit, got between a mother and her two cubs
Oh, jeez.
and didn't see it. And she was defending her turf. So what it was a bluff charge. She chased them down the hill and then stopped at some point. And then the family suddenly was wide awake. For the first time, they understood the power of nature. And I thought, oh, I could see the billboards. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is what's going to appear on Times Square, right? We finally got this show is going to be a hit now. It's like they're going to start with this big bear chasing the 8-year-old blonde girl down the hill.
And can we get? Okay, is Ranger Sue still with us?
It, well, yeah, hang tight. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Ranger Sue comes back in a big way in this story.
Okay.
So I pulled the kids off in the family in the parking lot, and what happened? And then now they're excited. Now I'm saying, oh my God, everything I just told you, power of nature. Now I understand how beautiful it is. I really feel charged. I understand what. I got amazing on the fly interviews. And then Ranger Sue comes down last, and I pull her over and say, so what happened up there, Ranger Sue? And if looks could kill, I wouldn't be talking to you now, Helen.
Oh,
She
dear.
goes, well, she says, you're not going to use that footage, are you? And I'm thinking, hell yeah, I am if I can. But I'm not going to tell her that. I say, well, I don't know. What exactly happened? She gave me a withering glance and then left the scene, left us there, got in her Jeep and disappeared and left us all there. By
Ranger
the time I
Sue.
got back to headquarters in the Grand Tetons, I'd already gotten a call from my boss in Silver Spring, Maryland, where Discovery was based at the time, saying, what the hell have you done? The ranger says that you provoked a bear, you nearly got a family killed. And all of the films we are shooting, including our IMAX films in the national parks, have to get out by the end of the day.
What? Ranger Sue.
Ranger Sue blamed us for
Oh,
her error.
oh.
We started calling her Deranger Sue after that.
so, so that's like anyone's arch villain now is Ranger
Yeah,
Sue.
yeah, yeah. I tell this story in my. I hope I don't run into Ranger Sue on one of my cruises. 'Cause I
Oh,
just told
she's
this
behind
story.
me. Hey, Sue, come on in.
Hey Sue, hey
Talk to me
Sue,
now.
yeah.
Hi, Sue. Yeah, yeah. It's just we're besties. Actually, that's my mother, Neil. Plot, plot twist.
I
Plot
got to go,
twist.
Helen. I got to look at the time.
Oh,
Look at the
that's a
time,
damn,
Helen.
damn shame. Well, that's a
But
shame.
the wrap up of that is when I we did show it to the head of the national parks, who flew down via helicopter from Yellowstone, have a meeting with us, thinking, "Oh my God, we're in trouble." And me and the cameraman are sitting there with the big beta cams, and he goes, "All right, let me see the footage." And he rewound it, and he showed the footage, and looks at and the guy looks and goes, "Oh, this is a fine. You did exactly what you're supposed to do." And we think, "Okay, we're saved." And he goes, "Now just go back to the beginning, hit record, and record over it all, and you can stay in the park."
So you lost it. Did you lose it, or did you keep it and just did some
No,
tricky?
no. I thought I knew I had two cameras. I thought I could hide the second camera. There's no, but then I thought this is National Geographic. This is Discovery Channel. I can't lie. And then
Yeah.
there are bigger things going on than me and my little TV show. So we recorded over it. The cameraman had a tear in his eye when he did it. He lost his Emmy nomination that day.
Right, just littering away because of Ranger Sue. Thanks, Ranger Sue.
Exactly.
You
Who
cost
didn't
him.
show up for the meeting? I never saw Ranger Sue again. By the way.
Well, and this cameraman's now on Skid Row. He's not eating, all because of Ranger Sue.
It's been nothing but trouble ever
Nothing,
since.
right?
Oh,
See,
you're the bear guy. You're the bear guy, and you
yeah,
got the kids killed.
yeah, yeah. He's the people that when people walk past him, well, that's the bear guy. Right, I roll. So, well, you've had certainly some interesting, more interesting stories than I have. But now let's talk about your novel because your novel Primetime Travelers
Mhm.
blends time, travel, history, and humor. And so, what inspired you to shift from nonfiction documentary to writing?
It's a good question. It's like once I got into documentary, I love the form, I love the history, I love the stories. But I found after maybe my 100th visit to some parched ruin on a windswept field in Turkey or whatever that I kind of wish I could see what it looked like when it was new. I'm tired of looking at two bleached pillars in the sun. So I was thinking,
With a kraken.
how, how can I bring back ancient Troy, where you could imagine Agamemnon and King Prime
Hmm.
living there, and then fiction. But I always kind of felt like the imposter syndrome that that's not my game. I'm Mr. Serious scholarly TV producer guy. But two things happened in 2016. It was when I started writing. One is I turned 50, and the other thing was my great hero died. My great creative hero died, David Bowie. We're coming up on his 10th
Hmm.
anniversary, and why I have no skill in music at all. I was always enamored of not only Bowie's music, but his ability to be so fearless in the choices he
Mm,
made.
yeah.
When I read his obituary, I was reminded what I already knew, that he had made 28 albums and each one was vastly different than the others. Most were huge successes. When they weren't, he got up and he tried something else. I remember just being dazzled by his fearlessness and how he was not afraid to put himself out there. And I remember thinking, if David Bowie can do it 28 times, little old Neil Laird can do it once. So I started writing then. And the first book or two I couldn't get out there, it was trial by fire and had to learn a new language. But then I realized my voice when I started writing about my day job, all these stories I've been telling, and mix it with my love of ancient history. So my books take place as if the TV crew, kind of like a cheesy ancient aliens like TV crew, finds a portal to the past, and all they want to do is go back and win an Emmy. That's their only goal. Um, and when they go back, they realize, oh, it's a little tougher than that. So each of the books has them transporting to Egypt in the first one, Primetime Travelers, then Pompeii, and now the book that I'm finishing now, Primetime Troy. And in addition to having the satire of television and being able to bring the world of Ramsay the Great or the destruction of Pompeii or the myth of Homer life, I also, being a gay filmmaker and writer, I want to have positive queer stories too.
Hmm.
So the lead character, Jared, is gay and he comes out in the first book. And then in the second book, when of course his film is a success, since he's the only one who's gone back to Ramsay the Great's time and made a film, he decides he's only going to go back in the past if he can tell the stories of forgotten queer people. So when he goes back to Pompeii, the goal is to put a face on. Have you been to Pompeii?
I have
Have you
not been
seen
to
Pompeii?
Pompeii. I mean, I've seen many documentaries on
Yeah,
Pompeii, but I have not set foot on Pompeii. But it's
definitely put it on your list and call me before you go. I'll set
oh,
you up.
perfect. Cool. I'm writing this
But
down.
I don't know if you know from what the plaster cast of Pompeii.
Yes, the
Yeah,
two. It's supposed to be like mother and child or something.
exactly. The mother and daughter is exactly what
Mm,
I'm talking about. There's a famous one called the Two Maidens, which you
hmm.
see as soon as you enter the main entrance to Pompeii in the gift shop, which I think is rather ignoble. But that's where you see
It's in the
this.
gift
And
shop.
for
It's
yes,
in the
there's a
gift.
gift shop where you can buy like mouse pads of like Vesuvius erupting and crap. It's like wow, okay,
And that's where they
not
have this.
exactly.
That's where they have the
Yeah, and then
plaster
there's a
cast.
little behind glass. There's like about 8 or
Okay.
9 of these plaster casts, and these are hollowed out. They're not the actual bodies. They're hollowed out where the bodies were before they incinerated. But finally, about 10 years ago, 5 years ago or so, they were able to find some DNA in some of these, and some living tissue or human
Hmm.
tissue. And one of the first ones they examined was the two maidens, and they quickly found out through CAT scans and DNA they were not two women. They were not a mother and her child. They were two men who were not related, and they're both between 20 and 30 years old. And if you look
Wow.
at this tender embrace, it's hard for me not to see two people who love each other holding each other while death comes for them. You
Right.
could argue as a shopkeeper that the metalsmith hugged the wine merchant, but I don't know if you do that with the dude across the street. So
Right.
why it's impossible to document behavior and sexual attitudes. Now that I can do fiction, I can take that leap. I couldn't do that for a National Geographic show, but in my books, I have Jared and crew find out the identity of these two guys, and that's why they go back. They want to put a face and a name on these two people.
Wow.
And so I went to Pompeii, and as I say, I rented a villa there for a couple months and go there every day and learned other places and other people that live there. And I wove them into my book and told a likely story of who these two men could have been. Again, fictionalized. And I'm not going to pretend that what I write is truth. But wrapped around this love story, and that's what it is the hard facts of what happened in Pompeii. I still bring my eye and ear as a documentary filmmaker to my novels, where when you read about the eruption of Pompeii, you can rest assured that's exactly how the record describes it to be, down to the hour. And I love bringing that verisimilitude to my books, even if they're time travel romps.
Yeah, and so with the two the two maidens we'll call them, but even though they're not the two maidens in your story, how did you get any pushback from the really traditional scholars like that's a no saying things like that, or have you had any feedback from them or not?
I haven't. I mean, once or twice people will come out and say, "Oh, yeah, that's what a queer writer wants," and it's true. It's like it's fiction.
It's
Look,
fiction.
I'm not putting this in a documentary. I'm not saying this is fact. This is a time travel romp about
Hmm.
it's a satire about a TV crew. So hopefully, anyone who reads it knows that I am playing I'm playing fast and loose with the facts. And the
Right.
facts, the story. So I haven't got the pushback there because I think it's pretty clear when you read into it.
It's clearly
It's
so
one interpretation.
it's your
I mean, some
interpretation.
people, certainly the people that came out with that theory about 5 or 6 years ago, got a lot of pushback within the scholarly community because they very much wanted it to imagine that it was a gay couple too. And some people, well, it can't be this, it can't be that. Don't jump to conclusions. What you want. So you'll get that pushback within that community.
Mm.
But when it comes to a narrative, and a lot of my readers are gay, but most of them are straight, and they just want a good love story.
Yeah, I mean, a love
And when
story
you
is a love
find
story.
out, yeah, when you find out who these two guys are, hopefully it brings a tear to your eye.
Well, it's an interesting twist, and like in a lot of your books, like Primetime Travelers, places your TV crew in like bizarre, adventurous, historical situations. But how much of the humor and chaos that you use in your books is drawn from like your real experiences in your production? Do you draw from
Oh,
that?
a great deal. I mean, you probably would dig them if you love my shows. Might recognize some faces and some names. I change them, of course, because I have to.
Yeah, there's
Like
no
the
Ranger
host.
Sue. Like Ranger Sue is Ranger
No, it's
Tiffany.
more contemporary, but certainly, hosts that I've worked with, network executives that I've worked with, the satire it's very much a satire. Again, the third one is like Troy. The only reason that the network even green lights Troy is because they want to see a horse. They say, don't come back without a horse.
Right.
And they go back in time and they find out they never had a horse because it's a stupid concept to put a Trojan horse. Who's going to buy that? But the network wants one, so the time travelers have to build one, messing
Okay.
with time. because at the end of the day, the network gets what the network wants.
That's what
You know,
it was.
so that's the kind of satire I'm playing with, yeah. And I get a chance to skewer that, hopefully in a light way. But certainly, a lot of my experiences over 3 decades in television is very much front and center of my books.
So the next one, which is your primetime Troy, tell us about. Can you tell us a bit about that, or you can't tell us a bit about that yet?
Yeah, I'm writing it now. Hopefully get it out probably mid next year. It's done. It's now what I call beta readers, people who are used to reading these kind of books, have read my past books, and they give me feedback, and then it goes to my editor and that kind of stuff. But again, this one is a bit different. Only in each of my books, I try to have somebody fall in love too. And the first one, Jared does. The second one, Kara, who's the camera woman, a black lesbian, who's Jared's best friend. She falls for Julia Felix, who is the strongest woman in Pompeii, based on a real woman who may or may not have been lesbian. But so the love story is Kara and Julia Felix. And the third one is the host, Derek, who's straight. But so it doesn't always have to be gay. But I try to have some emotional arc in all my books, so I
Mm-hmm.
can dig deeper in each character. And in this book, I really question what myth is versus what fact is, because at the end of the day, the Trojan War probably didn't happen at all. Achilles and Agamemnon and Patroclus and all that, it's myth. So what happens when you go back and play with myth versus reality? And
Mm,
is history fixed? Because even if we
mm.
do meddle with time, people want a horse, they're going to get a horse. Homer's going to
Yep.
make it up, or some 14th century French monk is going to add it there, whatever. It is history fixed in a way. No matter how much we meddle with it, we still get the story we want.
Wow.
That's the
And
kind of questions I'm dealing with.
when you were back in, in like when you were in Turkey looking for the city of Troy, did you go to any of the sites that were supposedly like I think they've just found Troy, didn't they? Just like they
Oh yeah,
you
repeatedly,
know.
repeatedly, many times. Again, when I was Troy, I stayed in Turkey about 50 miles south because I've been to Troy many times, shot films there, and it's
Mm.
really boring. It's a sad ruin. It's a miserable ruin. It's really
It
hard
was
to
layers.
imagine.
It was like it was under layers and layers and
Yeah,
layers, right?
layers. You look at it
You know.
now, it's like melted layers. Now,
Mm.
Pompeii, when I wrote Primetime Pompeii, I rented a lovely little place near Sorrento, just maybe 20 minutes by train, and I would go to Pompeii every other day and walk around. Egypt, I know so well. Egypt, the hook in Egypt is they go back and they have to find a lost mummy in the Duat, which is the underworld.
Mm.
So that's real fantasy where the crew has to go in the 12 hours of night looking for a pharaoh's lost mummy. So it really deals with the mythology of ancient Egypt. So I went back and I went to all the tombs in the Valley of the Kings and I memorized all the tomb paintings. If you look at those tomb paintings, those are all basically to safeguard the pharaoh's Ka, his spirit, as he goes through the underworld every night and then rises with the sun the next day. And each gate has a different monster that wants to kill you.
Mm.
So Jared and company have to get past the 12 gates to get out by day.
Wow.
So it really is them going into Egyptian mythology and seeing if they'll survive
Wow.
and win an Emmy.
Do you walk around like when you're traveling, like you're walking around going, "Oh, this is going to be a great part of my. I'm going to turn this into a book." This is like, do you what drove you to go to Troy? What? How did you decide Pompeii is my next destination? For just because
I
you've been there
think,
in this past, or just because the
yeah, I think, I
history?
mean, that's where television helps because these are all very, very proven evergreen subject
Hmm.
matters. Pompeii always rates. Troy always rates. Ancient Egypt, the Valley of the Kings always rates. So
Mm.
I don't want to go too obscure with the time periods they go into. I want to go with the ones that are really well known, and I want a good adventure. So Pompeii is very much a disaster book in a way because it's all about them trying to get out before they die. And I
Yep.
think it's as much based on all the disaster films that I saw as a kid, like the Poseidon Adventure and Towering Inferno. You
Neil,
know,
Poseidon Adventure, and there's a reason why I do not go on boats is because of the Poseidon Adventure, and in
oh,
Towering Inferno is the reason why I don't like to go up in tall buildings. Those two films and Jaws. I don't go on the water for Jaws, but those two
yeah.
films.
I mean, then yeah, you stop watching movies then, lady, because you're limiting your.
I know, but the Poseidon Adventure, I was like, I would have climbed up the tree to get out. Would you have stayed at the bottom? Would you have climbed up the tree
Oh
and got
no,
to
I'm going to bump banging. I'm going with the Reverend. It's funny you mentioned Poseidon Adventure because people ask what film made you want to be a movie maker. I wish I could say it was a Seven Samurai or it was Seven Seal or it was some other wonderful classic. Breathless. It was Poseidon Adventure,
Ah,
and it was a Poseidon Adventure because I saw the film in 1972 when I was five, far too
well,
young, 5 or 6.
no, that's
My
about what I
mother
thought.
took it because my elder brother wanted to go, and she tagged me along. I tagged along, And I had never seen a film like this. I was raised on, Disney movies or the computer
Mm.
wore tennis shoes, that kind of crap. And here I am in this big movie theater in downtown Pittsburgh watching this film that I was probably too young to see. And it swept me away. When Shelley Winters dies and the
I just
boat
about to
turns
say when
over.
Shelley Winters dies because she loses her breath, I'm like, we're all rooting for Shelley
No,
Winters.
no, not Shelley,
Oh,
right?
well, not
That was
Shelley. We all love
terrifying.
Shelley. I know we
Yeah.
all love Shelley. Bless Shelley's heart. I love Shelley. I
But
know.
I remember being so transfixed by this film, and I mean, of course, as a kid, I knew it wasn't real, but I also didn't understand how it was made. And as we were leaving the theater, it was a big crush of people because it was a huge hit when it came out. I lost sight of my mother and my brother, and I wandered into the lobby by myself. And I walked up to the old one sheet poster, a big movie poster, and I can still see it. It's a silhouette of the upside down
Mhm.
boat. And then below it had little boxes of saying, Stella Stevens is the whore with the heart of gold and whatever. Gene Hackman is a reverend who won't quit, whatever nonsense it was. And the penny dropped. And I realized as a 5 or 6 year old that I had been duped. That somebody somewhere, when I saw these names of directors and writers and actors, that somebody somewhere made this film, that a bunch of creative people took me on this roller coaster ride, and I was absolutely hooked then. I wanted to be a filmmaker then.
Well, see, it's amazing. That's a good story because it is certain when you're young, you're so impressionable, and if that's what led you to this, and we're grateful for the Poseidon Adventure.
It was the right, yeah, exactly. I mean, probably, if I'd seen a Godard film, I would have just been bored shitless and then walked out.
I
It
know
had to
some.
have been a film where, a boat flips on its ass and a bunch of people have to escape before they die.
I know.
5 year
I
old can
know.
understand that.
I never at the end though when they're tapping on the bottom of the hull. How would they? I don't know. I was always like,
It's a
I
bit
don't know.
sloppy at the end. It's like I think it's when they're running out of film or something. It's like, let's just get them out of
All
here.
right, so we'll just tap on the
We're
thing. We'll
an
cut out
hour
a
and 20
yeah. We'll
minutes.
cut out a hole and then they can get up. But yeah, it's
There
like
just happens to be a Greek rescue mission right on top of them.
exactly. I know. But
and
Shelley
and
Winters
the
when she could go into the water. I hate going in the under. I get claustrophobic. I think because of those scenes of them getting through the water under the
wow,
thing.
okay.
I know. See, I know. I have issues, Neil. Look,
Yeah,
I need to
that's why
go
you're
on
a dog person. Yeah.
exactly. I have many issues. Um,
I guess I won't see you on my cruises then.
oh no, my wife. I'm like, we will go. I will. I'm fascinated about getting on a cruise ship, but only if it stays in port and not goes out in the open sea because
Well, that's a bit self-defeating.
it is self-defeat because I'm like, okay, I'll survive the shipwreck or the ship thing. I'll get eaten by a shark because I've seen Jaws. It's like with me flying. I have fear of flying. Don't get me started by fear of flying. But if I end up and the plane lands in the ocean, I'm like, a shark's going to get me. I'm going to get on a boat it's going to capsize. I have these disaster.
Wow, okay.
It's because of these disaster movies, Towering Inferno and Jaws and all these disaster movies. They put the fear of life into me. So yeah, right now I'm in my closet and this is where I'm going to stay. Not
It's
not
safe
proverbially.
there. Of course, I
It's
think
safe.
of all those slasher movies. It didn't help Jamie Lee Curtis, and the
Ah,
end of
Jamie.
Halloween. So a closet isn't always a safe zone.
It isn't. That is probably true, but I'll take that over a big cruise boat. But
All right.
so with your just quickly with your story, what do you want people taken away from your books, and where can people actually get to read your books?
The books are all on Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com, look for Neil Laird. The first two books are out there. Or you can sign up for my newsletter and get it through there, NeilLaird.com, and just I give your email address. And sometimes I give out free chapters and stuff there, so it gives you a chance to read stuff for free before.
Well,
Um,
well,
what was the other question? Yeah.
I was just gonna say to you, what do you want people to take away, and then if you could just give some final advice to anyone that wants to be an author or filmmaker, what
Yeah.
would be your advice to them?
I think it'd be the same thing. I think what I want to take away is anybody can do it. It's like, just dive in. Don't be afraid. Don't have imposter syndrome. Don't wait until things just strike you because time goes really fast. And I'm so glad that I wrote those books and tested myself where I could very easily just rest on my laurels. There's never a great time to do it, but just sit down and just see what happens. When you do write, don't self edit, turn off your internet and just get words on paper. You feel so much better when you have something written on paper. And then before you know it, you have a bloody book
Yeah,
and
and you got
and
three
you
of them.
learn. Don't
There you go.
expect it to be perfect. Yeah, it's going to take time. It's a new language, and it has reinvigorated my creativity. And the fact that I'm doing all these things now, I'm still making films, as I mentioned. I'm a novelist. I do cruise talks. All these podcasts, all these different ways to talk not just about my books, but to get people creatively invested again. Because I reinvented myself, and I think anybody can at any age.
Yeah, and I think that goes to for people that are listening that maybe want to get into, so for rescue and things like that, like challenge yourself, put yourself out there. It's not easy, but if you follow your
Yeah,
passion,
yeah,
follow your commitment, and just put yourself out there, who knows what will happen and where it will lead to. So
exactly, exactly.
exactly. So I want to thank you so much, Neil, for joining us and sharing your incredible stories and your insights and your inspiration. Today. It's been wonderful having you on, and we could probably chat for hours and hours, but our readers are like tapping on their watch, going, "Wrap it up, kids, wrap it up." And I want to thank our amazing listeners for tuning in today. We're so grateful that you spend part of your day with us talking about rescue, storytelling, compassion, and the amazing work happening all around us. Be sure to follow this podcast. It'll be going up next week, and catch future episodes wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podbean. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends. And until next time, keep lifting up those voices for rescue, both canine and creative. So thank you, everyone.